Hey, welcome back to the Dr. Luke channel. We are continuing with our tinfoil hat theme. Isn't this fun? Aren't we quirky? Isn't learning great? We're going to be talking about chapter 33, part 2 of the Golden Bough from the abridged version of Frazer's text. Really, a lot of things we're going to be looking at today are downstream for the issues covered in that chapter. A lot of it was a rehash and looking at different permutations of the vegetal rites and rituals involved with the liberation of the vegetable spirit from decaying plant life and Adonis figures and throwing them into the water, but ultimately culminating in the synchronization with Christian rituals such as the ones that are at Easter. And some of the things that I want to talk about today are looking at how those symbols, those rites may parallel from the Adonis myth, not only with Christianity, but also with JFK. Some of the issues that we talked about last time, I suggest that you go, if we don't make this to like a super like 4.5 hour long episode, we break it up into 2 parts. I suggest you watching part 1 of chapter 33, the ominously titled 33, where we discuss such things as the Pope giving a replica Pieta to JFK during his July 2nd, 1963 visit of the Vatican, and the symbolism that is attended to it. It's actually going to be relevant for us talking about the World's Fair today. We talked about the idea of like the symbolic meaning possibly of JFK Jr. celebrating his 3rd birthday on the day that JFK was buried in the ground, and what that might mean for the transference from a psychic and collective perspective in regards to the Adonis archetype, and how JFK is preserved above ground with the eternal flame, and how JFK Jr. ultimately met his end in a watery grave, and how that in some ways parallels the Adonis ritual. We talked about some further echoes of the Aphrodite archetype with Marilyn Monroe working in a drone factory. And today we're going to go deeper into the timing of the JFK assassination. It's specifically happening around a few days before Thanksgiving. I believe it happened 6 days before Thanksgiving, and the implications of that. Also, I want to take a look at the space program that I have, or the space project that I have perhaps not addressed very well here, is the Mariner 2 program, which involved a close-up look at the planet Venus and how that figures into the Adonis and Aphrodite ritual. So there's going to be some of the things that we talk about today and some of the things we talked about last week. Welcome, everybody. In case you have not noticed, we have a new person on our panel today. We have Kristen, who I'm so excited because Kristen is like kind of famous, and she's going to elevate the status of everything that we do here. So thank you, Kristen, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I wanted to have you on for a very long time. What do you guys have some? Ostick was not in part 1. We did that with Heidi from Unfiltered Rise yesterday, and Kristen, this is your first time here. Did you guys have any sort of initial thoughts from the reading of chapter 33 before we go into the potential implications of it in our 20th century alchemy?
I don't.
Okay, I mean,
Yes, Ostick?
just that it's a continuing in the themes that we have discussed. The next chapter is even more, I mean, more synchronicity ridden, because you'll find the particular festival that is uh, dedicated to Sibyl, or this lady, or the death ritual of Attis, and she's supposed to be. It's the ritual is supposed to be on 322, so that is pretty significant, and it's related
Yeah, it
towards
is.
3. Yeah, so that caught my eye when reading this chapter. So I'm excited to see when we get to it and what implications could be derived.
Well, I think you've read ahead, or I've not addressed that yet. I had to reread the chapter 33 like 8 times before we went on and did this. But let's get into it. Jordan, can we go to the slide on the World's Fair unless you want to say something? Oh, you're muted.
No, we can get into it.
Okay. All right, let's do that. So I have long known that the 1964 World's Fair is very important for the modern mythological narratives. I don't really know why, but I mean, really one of the first hints at it that I ever got was when Men in Black came out in I guess, the mid to late 90s. And a lot of people have devoted a lot of ink to trying to understand the esoteric symbolism in this film. And I'll get to that in a second. But going off topics that I mentioned during the intro of this, when JFK was given the replica Michelangelo's Pieta, um, it was a forerunner of what the Vatican would do for the 1964 World's Fair. They actually took the original Pieta, shipped it to America for the World's Fair. They took all these different procedures to make sure that nothing bad would happen to it. Its own special container, flotation devices in case the ship sunk, a radio tracker, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, why was it so important to get to the World's Fair? What are was it just a gesture to humankind? That's how it's pitched. But when I learned that, and then I've long known that the Apollo hardware was debuted at the 1964 World Fair in their space park. I was like, okay, this is all culminating towards something larger. It seems like it's a bit of an alchemical playground. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean that there are intentional alchemists. I've stated this throughout the different programs that we've done here. I believe what I've come to the conclusion of, the theory that best explains everything so far, and I don't have it completely worked out, is that there are interlocking mythological archetypes that descend upon our profane reality. And it seems that the Trinity test, the assassination of JFK, the moon landing, these tell a story ultimately about the fall and the resurrection. And they have different phases. This is an idea that this sort of improved upon by Hoffman and Downard. But it seems like the Trinity test is like the Negretto stage. The JFK assassination would be the Robeto, and the moon landing would be the Albedo. But there are these transitional states where we have the spirit of JFK, if we want to talk about it this way, where it is in some way represented in the tomb with the Pieta at the 64 World's Fair. They built this enclosure, and I have an image of it down here in this blue yellow light. So it's different from how it would be featured in the Vatican. But you had to go into this place, and Americans could go and see it up close in person. I think they had like conveyor belts that kept people cycling in, like just to keep the line moving, almost like farm animals. But you could see this, and if you've been following along, Frazer makes the case that the Madonna and her son are amendments to the Adonis and Aphrodite archetypes. And so it's really uncanny that the JFK would be given this, and that this would be presented to the American public in 1964, shortly after his assassination. And then when I look deeper at the layout, I'd long known about the Unisphere. We'll look at that in depth here in a few slides. But IBM had a pavilion there, and it was called the Ovoid, and it was undeniably in the shape of an egg. It's supposed to be, I forget what it's called, like it's supposed to be one of those little globes that were on typewriters that I guess were responsible for actually making the indentations into the print, but it ended up looking more like an egg. So they called it the Ovoid. And given what we've studied about alchemy, it's hard to deny that if this is an alchemical playground, that it's at least intentionally or not looking like the philosopher's egg, where all the elements of alchemy come together in order to create the philosopher's stone. It also calls to mind the rebus, which I have up there as well. Ironically, in the early 80s, there was there was an attempt to rebrand IBM. They turned it into this hieroglyphic where it has the I and the B and the M, right? So, and that was in fact called rebus, slightly different in spelling. So as we have the philosopher's egg, the Pieta, we also then have the Apollo hardware that is hinting at the resurrection, the alchemical marriage that is going to go on with the solar figure landing on the lunar figure to create what is going to be the philosopher's egg or philosopher's stone, which I've claimed is the blue marble. So we have here also the Unisphere, that is at the Corona Park, you can see that it's like a cage, right? Which is interesting in and of itself. It's a steel cage. The fact that the globe would be represented in such a way is very interesting. And then in Men in Black, we have it destroyed by a flat disc, which I think is not lost on me as someone who's sympathetic to enclosed cosmology. And what was so interesting about the 64 World's Fair was the date that it was opened. It was opened on April 22nd, 1964. And as we've talked about here, that is one of those synchronistic high holidays. Oppenheimer is born on 422. It's also Earth Day. So we have a little story here that's unfolding via the calendar about the unleashing of Promethean fury, the attempt to harness it to go to the moon via the hardware that is at the Corona grounds, and then ultimately Earth Day, a chance to protect ourselves from this technology that we've injected into the system. So there's lots to talk about here. That I'm just skimming the surface. We're not done with the 64 World's Fair, but that's how I'm going to introduce the topic. So I'll let you guys talk for a little while.
This is all new information. This is pretty mind-boggling. I did not know that the World Fair opened on his birthday. That makes it a bit more tighter. All the things that we've been talking about. So yeah, I mean it's a fascinating collection of symbols as it is. But yeah, it's heavy to take it in. At,
It is, isn't
when
it?
you're presented all at once. Oof.
I don't even I struggle. What I've communicated here is like half of what's in my notes. I could sit here and try to go through my notes and fumble them, but to be honest, we have like 20 slides, so it's unlikely we'll even finish today. Kristen, what about you? Anything strike you? It doesn't necessarily have to be profound, but is there anything that you found particularly interesting about what I've pointed out here?
Nothing that struck out that I need to comment on, I don't think.
Something I should say here is that there were themes to the Corona or to the 64 World's Fair. It was called Peace Through Understanding, and then it had a subtitle, Man's Achievement on a Shrinking Globe in an Expanding Universe. So that was the theme, Peace Through Understanding, Man's Achievement in a Shrinking Globe in an Expanding Universe. Which Disney had a pavilion, all these different companies pretty much anyone could present at this pavilion. They had all these different churches that presented. There was spirituality was a major aspect, which is something that I probably am going to have to treat at some point. Like they had pretty much all the different denominations of Christianity there, Masonic Lodge, a bunch of different faith community things. But Disney had one, and that's where the Small World song comes from. The event that they have at Disney World and Disneyland, it's a small world after all. Apparently that was specifically designed for the 1964 World's Fair. And so I found that to be, it fits the theme of man's achievement on a shrinking globe. It's like, it's really getting us out there. We have to expand our territory because we're going to run out of resources in this chaotic globe that we have ourselves on, right? And something I'd never really thought about before is the place that it happened at. We're going to get to this in a minute, but think about this. The site is Corona, Flushing, Queens. Does that call to mind anything for anybody?
I'm probably overthinking it. I mean, it's the sun.
Yeah.
Right? Flushing the queen. So is it the sun like taking the place of the queen, or where are you going with this?
Well, we'll get to it. I mean, I think you picked up on the fact that it's Corona, right? This is the solar crown, right?
Right.
But I mean, especially when we're thinking about this in the wake of the events of the assassination and the Trinity test, there needs to be a purification. There needs to be a cleansing aspect to everything, which we're going to get into because this unisphere is located in a fountain, and the symbolism. And then Queen, who's the queen?
I mean, that's a good question. We've been talking about Aphrodite.
Well, if the Corona is the sun, who is the queen?
I think this is much more obvious to you right now
than
than it is to me.
The moon. It's the
Oh,
moon.
okay. I was trying to think of like
Yeah.
specific.
Yeah. We're going to the
Uh,
moon, right? That's
Arc.
why we have the space park
Yes.
there.
Got
So
it. Okay.
we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Let's go to the next slide.
Sure. I do want
Oh,
to
sure. Go ahead.
mention understanding peace through understanding. I just like the law word magic people are gonna immediately fixate on that. And in the last conversation we had, we talked about all of the different churches who were there cooperating. So really we have kind of this standing under this unified religion,
Yeah.
even if it's kind of presented in all these different ways. We're standing under the authority of this kind of new world order, and the peace is coming through that. And this is something that Dr. Strangelove, I know we've moved a lot through
Yeah.
Kubrick, and
Yeah.
it's not as present as it was, I think, at the beginning of this journey in these presentations. But Dr. Strangelove obviously explores that
Yeah.
pretty deeply.
Yeah.
Peace on
And then, of
earth.
course, it's in the
Pax
spring.
Americana.
Peace. Yeah. There you go. There you go. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. And we have all the eggs, it's fertility. Yes, it's the Philosopher's Stone, but we also have, it's not exactly around Easter. I think it's about a month after the spring equinox, but is our calendar even right? It's snowing in February, and intuitively to me, if something's fixed energy peak winter, that would happen at the solstice, but this is something I'm working
Yeah.
through.
Yeah. I gotcha.
I don't know that I know.
Right. Well, it also the corona aspect is interesting to this, right? Because Apollo has an association with corona too.
I mean,
Okay. Yes, Asik?
we could talk. I just had a synchronicity with the 2020 thing about. I mean, from the day the WHO declared it a global health pandemic on 3rd of March 2020, 2021 or 2020, and the day the Queen actually died. I mean, the reported day of her death. Between them, there were 911 days exactly. So,
It's
like
crazy
a
how they keep
difference
popping
between
up
those
like
days.
that.
Yeah, on 8th of September, she died on Peter Sellers' birthday. So that was that. Yeah,
Oh, the numbers. I mean, the numbers. I love the gematria. I'm proficient in it to some degree. It goes on forever. I mean,
yeah.
we're just looking at matrix code.
Mm.
Okay, let's go to the next slide because I want to look a little bit more at this unisphere. Oh no, we're going to look at the IBM ovoid. I'm sorry. So I made Jordan watch this with me. Did you guys have a chance to watch the Think movie I sent you in our chat? It's okay if you didn't. It's fine. So I want to tell a little story about the ovoid that IBM had. It was a very bizarre experience. What you went into this thing and it raised you up via an elevator or something, 53 feet in the air, and then it took you inside the egg. And it had these 22 different screens where they showed independent movies that were still yet coherent, but perhaps from different angles with different symbolism embedded in it. And it was this film done by the Ames company called Think, and it was revolutionary at the time. I think the idea was to give people 2 hours worth of a cinematic experience in like 10 minutes. And you can watch the film. I don't think it approximates what was actually going on and what it was like for people, but you can kind of get at least a faint hint of what it was like. And I think one of the first things I thought after watching it was like, this would be a prime playground to do any sort of subliminal messaging. I was there with the clicker breaking it down to make sure nothing was like getting past my consciousness into my subconscious, but in fact it did, of course. And IBM is incredibly interesting. They're very involved in the Apollo program in a lot of different ways, but just even to have the communications in the mission control was really facilitated by IBM. And I'm not saying this is done on purpose, because I think this is really the low hanging fruit in a lot of conspiracy communities. And I'm really started developing this idea that conspiracy theories are actually leading us away from the hand of God, because it's too much for human hands to do. But all the different screens that are in this this Think movie really do look a lot like Mission Control during the Apollo missions, with all the different screens there. And whether intentional or not, I'd say it's unintentional. I think this has the effect of a slow transition to trusting, and this is what the film was largely about: the importance of modeling and simulations, trusting the authority of the machine, the model, the calculation over that which had just been slaughtered before the eyes of the American public, such as a charismatic leader. We don't trust the leaders anymore. What we trust now is technology. What we trust is the bombardment of signals and information and screens and reports that are coming through a computer nexus to you. And I find that to be really fascinating, how this may have weaned us, foreshadowed, and put us into a state where we are now deferring to the machine over the leader, the machine over our own senses, what we see with our own eyes, a normal fashion, not being bombarded with from 15 different angles. And with that in mind, you know, Ostic will appreciate this. In the top right-hand corner, I have included an image that Kubrick put into 2001, where he projects IBM onto the helmet of Dave Bowman at one point when I guess he's inside one of the pods. Of course, there was this whole thing about HAL being incremented one letter from IBM. It's really not hard to see, right? I mean, IBM was really the only computer player in the game at this point in history that people would notice the connection between HAL and IBM. With that in mind, thinking about it kind of changes the color of the scene, right? When Dave is shutting down HAL, I think we're probably getting a message here about how we need to not be so. I mean, I guess it's obvious, but even with this, it adds another layer to it. The problems with trusting the computer, the problems with trusting centralized information. So I'll let you guys respond.
I think this movie was a natural progression from Doctor Strangelove, because all through the early 60s he was reading about how scientists are creating these mass murder machines, and like anything can set them off whenever. So that leads into the optimism that he saw repeating with the Apollo program. Okay, that optimism with the military industrial complex that allowed us to create so many bombs, it's like a gun to our head right now. And now this another, I mean, people could talk about this is a psyop, this is another psyop, so he's targeting these two things. And but also thematically, with his thinking about, the human error can, just make this house of card fall down. So this is this is in line with his filmmaking themes and motifs. But I mean, I really enjoyed you brought this up. I didn't. I mean, this episode I'm getting a lot of new information. I never thought about it. This particular movie is pretty interesting in the sense that since you talk about it's showing the same movie from all different angles, and it's giving a 2 hour movie experience in 10 minutes. I think this is what Kubrick also does in a way. I mean, you have
Yes,
seen so
yes.
many analyzers, they superimpose his movies onto one another, they interject. Even I edit videos and I look into his movies to find, the resonances of certain motifs or some cyclical themes in there. So you can even, it's like breaking apart a whole movie in the sense, like, okay, all these scenes are connected in the sense. So I thought this could have been a point of inspiration for him. I'm just thinking about Kubrick right now. I don't really know much to expand beyond that at the moment.
That's a great point. That I mean, so Kubrick is kind of doing something different, right? He's making a 2-hour film, but really it's distilling down what could be hundreds of hours of films, right? Like if you take that ratio of 10 minutes being 2 hours, then what's a 120-minute film in terms of hour output or distillation? That's a great thought, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you go to they do the deconstructed fancy prefix menus, Do you know what I'm talking about? In really high-end restaurants, they take a concept and then they try to boil it down to its essence and give it to you in specific concrete pieces, but that's temporally in order, whereas this is all at the same time. I just think it's an interesting idea. What really leapt out to me is, well, there's a few things. It's really emphasizing the masculine head brain. Everything is achieved through thinking. It's not, and the thinking is completely separated from physical senses. Everything is abstracted. They talk about how everything's translated ultimately to binary ones and
That's
zeros,
right.
and then the computer processes it, and then you kind of revert through the abstraction layers back to reality. And nowhere in there is human sight, touch, feel, taste, intuition, emotions. So it's really going hard into, I would say, just the solar, just the masculine mode of processing information without the feminine at all.
Uh,
And you do see that throughout the culture at this time.
That's a
What were you gonna say?
really, I was just going to commend you. That's a really excellent insight. And as you were talking, it reminded me, and I'll let you get back to your point. I just want to make
Sure.
sure, I wanted to interject this real quick. If anyone's been following along, we had a somewhat lengthy discussion about the Apollonian and the Dionysian elements that seem to be represented concurrently in the 60s with the Apollo mission and with Woodstock, and how I was
Mhm.
like, I just was like searching around. I'm like, am I crazy for thinking this? Apparently, Ayn Rand gave a talk about
Yeah.
this in a way. I believe she did this at maybe Cornell or Syracuse or something like that. It's still out there. It's not quite the point that I'm pushing, but she picked up on this as well. What Jordan's talking about is this masculine Apollonian way of thinking. I was thinking about it more in terms of Nietzsche, but it works for this context as well.
Yeah. Well, and for alchemy, ultimately, you have the divine marriage, you have the combination of these elements. But in these examples, you see sort of the amplification and isolation of them. And perhaps that is so that later they can be recombined and be more powerful. I think we are yet to see that in the culture and mass and the collective occur, candidly, in a really healthy way. So I don't know how long it will take for us to figure that out, but they're certainly trying to play with these elements. And then the other thing that really leapt out at me is everything is a model. And like we kind of talked about, well, it helped me think about how differently is how even real, or is how like how is presented in 2001 almost like a character. But in fact, we have to remember it is just a simulator, it's just a computer. And yet we're totally interpreting reality through that lens. And it would not be, this is a bit conspiratorial, it would not be difficult, or rather the NASA hoaxes make a lot more sense when you think about all the people who interface with the project only through software. And that's only more so the case today. How many things do we do that are productive or real, and we're only interfacing with the screen and we're only interfacing with
Oh
software?
yeah.
We're never seeing it come into contact with physical reality.
Uh,
It wouldn't be difficult to convince people they're doing real stuff,
well, this,
but
yeah, I think it's an excellent point.
it's
I
just
want to, yeah, if I can just layer a little bit more on top of that. Something that I look at a lot now are like these SpaceX launches, and you have all the different engineers that are in a control room. And I think I noticed this in India as well. When you, Osik, when your country landed that lander on the moon, I don't know if you remember the beautiful images that we got from that, but it you have everybody who's in the control room looking at all these different screens, and then they're like, and we have touchdown, right? And they have like some graphic, or like there's some voice that comes over, and then everybody just starts clapping and hugging and high-fiving. It's like there's no direct evidence of this. It's all coming through all the different screens that are then put on all our different phone screens, computer screens, TV screens, and then that gets distributed out. And we have this recoiling of epistemology going on in the present day, where you have flat earthers and whatnot, and being like, no, what do your eyes say? And it's really presenting this choice between what can you immediately perceive and what's coming through the screen. And the argument always is like, well, think about all the people that would have to be in on it. They're not in on it. They're just they're a slave to the screen, and the screen has become the authority because that's how the epistemological standards may have changed around 1964.
We're all just playing a custom little video game made for us, and whether it's Facebook Reels or it's some job or if it's, you know, taking in a particular form of propaganda or chatting with bots on Twitter, because we know how many bots are rampant on social media and arguing with you. They don't seem like video games, I think, in the moment all the time. But when I zoom out, there's not much of a difference between that and like loading up a Nintendo game. Like,
Yeah.
just something for everybody.
What do you think, Ostic? I'm sorry if I was too cruel about the Indian moon landing.
Well, in your defense, it's not specific to India and your stance. It's universal.
How dare you? How dare you? You can pull. We can.
I mean,
we
they've
can look
not
at it real quick. If you want.
landed a person on the moon. So
You can.
yeah, I mean, even the Soviets had a probe on the moon before the Americans in the 50s. So in the
Right.
early 60s maybe. I mean, I think you can send a probe, but maybe a person could be a different thing. There's a limit. That is why they're not, they
Oh.
stopped at 12 Apollo. That is my limit.
No.
That is where I stand. You can send out things, but people might not really survive there.
There we go. There we go. 2023. Oh, what's interesting? I guess that happened on the 237th day of the year. That I guess this happened on Neil Armstrong's death day.
Yeah,
So
pretty interesting.
I shouldn't say this, but I mean, I think it stands to reason. Is the moon a physical object? So how would we know? How would we know? Kristen, would you like to add anything here before we go to the next slide?
I just, when you were talking about it earlier, it just basically the same ideas as Jordan had struck me. Also, how like we are so distracted by all the screens basically all the time, right? Like it's not even just one screen in our real lives anymore. You have like your phone, you have some people have a TV and a laptop and like all these other screens. So I feel like you have a little bit of that multiple layer input in real life too.
Yeah, I mean, it was you really have to think about what the interfacing with all this technology does to the human mind and how it makes us more suggestible.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay.
Also, I mean, I guess go watch it at your own risk, but there's some crazy stuff going on in that video when we pause it at different points and certain symbols overlaying with the US flag. There's a lot going on there that I don't think I even consciously know to articulate. So it, to me, seemed very brainwashy.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the IBM ovoid forever. I mean, just how crazy is that? You got a bunch of like madmen at IBM being like, okay, wouldn't it be cool if they came up into the air and got inside an egg and watched this crazy movie? Like what are companies even doing? Like I like it does raise interesting questions about what's going on with capitalism if you just can't make giant pavilions at the World's Fair anymore and do experimental art and stuff like that. Like this clearly isn't about a bottom line. But maybe, who knows? Maybe it was a net boon for IBM. Maybe it really increased their stock.
Well, now you don't need to bring everyone to a physical location.
That's right.
I think is maybe the difference.
Right.
It's just
Why make it
us
an
all the
egg
time now.
though? Why an egg? Okay.
Why not?
Okay. All right. So I've learned so much about the World's Fair. We're just going to keep learning together. So, wouldn't you know that the world's Corona Flushing Queen's site, before they started doing the World's Fair there, guess what it was? An ash dump. I don't know exactly how this happened. I don't know if ashes were taken there or they had industrial park there and it created a lot of ash, but it was an ash dump. It was known as an ash dump. And then I guess there was a 1939 World's Fair that the 1969 World's Fair was an improvement on, but I didn't go too deep into that. I'm sure there's lots of topographical alchemy there. But when I think ashes, I definitely think about the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's a resurrection symbol, right? In early Christian art, you will see the phoenix occasionally associated with Christ. You see it. You also will see it in some ways associated with Adonis. I believe Adonis's father was named Phoenix in some particular tales. But all this involves a descent and a resurrection, which is what goes on with Christ and Adonis, right? Into the tomb and then springing alive on Easter. And then with Adonis, obviously going into the underworld with Persephone and then back to the surface of the earth with Aphrodite. The ash dump of the Corona Flushing Queen site was pretty well known prior to the World's Fair. In fact, it makes its way into The Great Gatsby. Jordan, would you read it to us there? That passage by The Great Gatsby book.
Sure. This is a valley of ashes, a fantastic farm where ashes grow like wheat into ridges and hills and grotesque gardens, where ashes take the forms of houses and chimneys and rising smoke, and finally, with a transcendent effort, of men who move dimly and already crumbling through the powdery air. Occasionally, a line of gray cars crawls along an invisible track. The ash gray men swarm up with leaden spades and stir up an impenetrable cloud.
Thank you very much. So that's cool. Yeah, they used to call it the Valley of the Ashes or Valley of Ashes, not just ash dump. So that's what it was known as. So the phoenix is in fact associated with the stage of alchemy, specifically the Ribetto. Now, there are other birds associated with the other stages of alchemy. I found out the Negretto is associated with black crows, and the Albedo is associated with swans. That probably will be interesting given that the swan is a favored creature of Apollo, but I not have a chance to go too deep into that. So just so we're keeping track of our alchemical birds, that's how it goes. Black crows, phoenix, swans. There's probably more. I mean, these alchemists were so versed in so many different symbols. The same ideas are portrayed with different symbolism often. So there might be more birds at play here, but those are the three that I could find for this.
Yeah, I'll have to do some research on the order of the swan. There's like secret societies named after the swan.
Mm.
I'm sure there's things with the phoenix as well. We have the
Oh, yeah.
Phoenicians,
Yep.
which are a really big deal.
Yep.
And pretty influential.
Yep.
So it's interesting. We have these different sects, if you will, named after these different alchemical birds at different stages.
Mm-hmm.
What if, kind of transcending this conspiracy layer, what if that is sort of reality kind of showing us different stages of alchemy through these different secret societies beyond their own control? I don't think they coordinated. I don't think they were like, okay, you'll be Repetto, we'll be Albedo.
Maybe that's be an interesting
I don't
project
know.
for someone. Ostic or Kristen, do you want to say anything about this before we go? I think are we looking at the Unisphere next? I think we might be. But you guys go ahead. And we are looking at the Unisphere next.
This is in line with what you talked about earlier. So, I mean, it's all tightening it up in a way. So, I don't think I have anything to add. I think it's self-explanatory that what you've talked about here. So, yeah. And I'm impressed. I'm just sleepy. It's not that I'm it's boring.
Dude, I get it. I've been up since 6:30. I get it.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Like I'm reading everything about it. So I was reading the tables. I think it's pretty tight. It's good. I'll have to look more into it.
Well, I have to say, if it passes Ostic's test, then I'm satisfied. to be honest, I rely on you to check my work.
Okay, I'll be more stringent from now on.
Yeah, no pressure. Yeah.
Kristen, anything jump out at you on this one? Okay, let's go to the Unisphere slide, Jordan. Okay, so I've hinted at, I kind of showed my hand a little bit here. I mean, even the naming of the park, right? Corona, Flushing, Queens. We talked about this. The solar, the cleansing, the lunar with the queen, right? The queen holds the body, provides the womb, guards, for instance, the Pieta, right? We have Mary, the lunar figure, holding the dead son in the tomb at the freaking World's Fair. And then we have all these fountains for the flushing, right? We're washing away the grief. We're turning the page. We're moving past the JFK assassination, right? So they've got all these different fountains there. And then we have the corona, the solar king. And this is going to be the final achievement, the crown that Apollo achieves. That called to mind, when I thought about fountains, I could not help but think about the mercurial fountain that we looked at when we were talking about the different space programs, specifically the Mercury program, and how the symbols of Mercury get woven into like the NASA logo itself. And so when I look at this Unisphere, I've called it a cage, and I think that's kind of appropriate. I think it's I never really looked at it like that, but that's what it is. It's a steel cage, and it has these three rings around it, right? These are the I'm going to see if I can get them right. But one is the Yuri Gagarin space flight. The other is the Telstar satellite. And I think one of the other ones is for John Glenn. These three different trips. So I think that's interesting in and of itself that it had these three. It's like a type of crown on top of this scaffolding of the globe that's yet to have the meat put on it yet. We need that photo from Apollo 17 to really finish this thing off, to make our model come alive. But when I was thinking about these different orbiting satellites that were going around the Unisphere, it very much reminded me of the Ouroboros that we saw with the on the NASA logo. We were able to determine that is one of the symbols of Mercury. And wouldn't you know that this is all silver? So we have the quicksilver, the mercurial element in the fountain, being cleansed in the flushing. I think this all makes sort of sense. And you see there too with the Unisphere, you see it on a tripod, right? Which I guess makes sense. How else are you going to hold up a globe? But you also see the tripod in the mercurial fountain here in this alchemical image, the bottom right-hand corner. So it's all kind of crazy. And getting back to the Phoenix aspect of everything, it's the whole, it was very future oriented, right? It's about building like the world of tomorrow. So we're going to take an ash dump and turn it into the future. We're going to resurrect. We're going to bring the future back, right? We're going to go back to the future. So I think that fits in well with the Phoenix symbolism there. And I haven't devoted a lot of time thinking about this, but the main organizer of the event was a man named Robert Moses. I guess he was like an urban planner or something like that. Well, how about that? A man named Moses is going to build the fair that is going to take us to the promised future. That's like Moses in the Bible, right? Leads the Israelites to the promised land. I don't know when Robert Moses died, but Moses didn't make it into the promised land. I'd be curious how long Robert Moses lived. I mean, but I don't know. Someone talk while I'm looking something up.
I mean, there's a
He died in
parallel with what
1981.
Trump is planning in after the Gaza thing. They have turned that city into ash, and now they're going to bring new people there, settle. Maybe Americans turned into a Bali-like resort villa or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is what's going to happen there, according to him.
It's and I don't know if you know this, but like we have the 250th anniversary of America coming up this year, and so there's going to be. I think there's a World's. I think there's a World's Fair in Iowa, or maybe there's someone here. I don't know. Jordan knows more about it than I do, but I would expect, knowing what we know now about this World Fair site, I would bet money that it's going to be just as alchemical as this one.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit with Heidi. There was a bunch of hoopla about it and then nothing. And I can't find anything about the Iowa one today, but they are going to have a big event in DC in July. So I want to go.
Yeah,
We're
I think we
here.
can make it happen. It is interesting to think about. Something we've talked about in previous episodes is how Trump is doing a lot of things with like spiritual architecture that I think we ended last week talking about this, how he paved over aspects of the Rose Garden. He's affixed his name to the Trump Kennedy Center. I'm concerned about the viability of the Artemis program, given some of the symbolism going on there. I don't know exactly what. And I mentioned, I think I sent in our group chat, and I started the episode yesterday with how he's going to build that arch that's going to block out the Lincoln Memorial, which is interesting given the parallels between Lincoln and JFK. What that means psychically or spiritually to the collective, I think it's very interesting. How this World's Fair is managed, I expect would go into that bucket of ideas. You know, when you think about this kind of provided a seamless transition to move the dream of Kennedy from the podium to the actual moon. I'm curious how it's structured and set up and what that's going to mean. Everything that we've looked at is kind of undoing the spirit of JFK, undoing the spirit of Lincoln via Trump. And so I wonder if there's something about the World's Fair coming up, not looked at it at all, which would somehow be an undoing of that. It would follow that pattern.
Yeah, it's interesting. Um, it's definitely a reset.
Reset is a good word.
Hmm.
Can you
I
tell
will
me
say
about
something.
where you got this image from? That what
Which
does that
one?
image actually is? The image of
Which one?
the illustration.
Oh, the
Oh,
alchemical one?
that's the Mercurial Fountain. I think that's from the Rosarium Philosophorum, but I don't know. Jordan, can you help, please?
Okay, okay, it's fine.
Yeah, I
I'll
think
start
it
with
is
you.
as well, but yes, so
Ossick's been
we've looked at
busting
this
me on citations lately.
before. And I think the coloring might be newer. If you look at the original, I don't think there was color, but
Like,
Yeah, it's important because we talked about the Rosarium Philosophorum as being, it means rose garden, right? So it's kind of
yeah, it
fitting,
does.
right, that it's in continuity with all the Jungian themes and also um, the other elements that have tracked with the Kennedy presidency. And
So you can find it in Jung's book. I don't think that's the original source of it.
no.
Jung was copying.
He might have gotten it from Michael Mayer. That's a big source of philosophy for him. We looked last week at the Zosimos figure. I'll have to
Yeah.
track this. If someone wants to track it down while we're talking about things, that's great.
Yeah, and there's like different illustrations of it. They're all pretty much the same though. They all have the sun and the moon and
Yeah.
I'm like,
Right.
we should focus on some sort of like court astrologers. Kings used to have them back in the day. Like, do you have these characters in the office right now? Like, they might be, picking up on this symbolism
Wait,
and inserting them, or something is going on.
astrologers?
Yeah.
Astrologers? Is that what you said? We're going to be talking about astrologers or wise men or the magi here
Mhm.
in a moment. It's going to be interesting to talk about what that actually means. At least on the surface of it, that is like a major no-no in American politics. I remember this as a child. Nancy Reagan either confessed to or someone caught her consorting with astrologers during the Reagan administration. And it was wall-to-wall hysterical headlines because people were concerned that she was taking geopolitical advice from psychics and astrologers and then trying to influence what Reagan was going to do. And so at least publicly, the idea of someone associating with an astrologer is like not something that's done anymore. There is an element of astrology which I've not talked about in regards to the JFK. There was is it Joan Dixon? Jordan and I've talked a little bit about this. Is that her name? But she was this astrologer in the late 50s, early 60s who accurately predicted that JFK would be assassinated in office. But then she got a lot of other things wrong. But she, for a long time, she had a lot of credibility because she was one of the few people saying that was going to happen. Is it Joan
Yeah,
Nixon?
she was.
Is that her name?
It is. Yeah, it's like Jeane. She did a lot of things, so she wasn't.
Jean Dixon.
She wasn't like strictly an astrologer. She knew astrology, but she was aware of a lot of different, I would say, esoteric arts.
I'm gonna let you guys chat for a second, okay?
Yeah, but I always call astrology channeling with extra steps. So
Her Gemini writing ability also popularized her work, it says. Was she a prompter back in the day? This was a joke.
That's funny. Yeah, it's a good joke. I like it. Yeah. And she was pretty influential. And then we talked about Bunny Melons. They called her a witch, but I don't really know. I couldn't find a lot about Beverly. So if anybody out there knows anything about her, I would love to learn more, because it would stand to reason that Jackie O would have known her as well, or at least have been aware of her. But I'm not so sure.
Bunny Mellon or Jean Dixon?
Well, so Jean Dixon is separate, and then Bunny Mellon, who's friends with Jackie O, had a witch, is what they call her in her biography, who she employed. But I think she was like, we would kind of think of it more as a psychic than a witch. Like, but there isn't a lot of detail about what she did. And I think her name was Beverly Newton. I can't find anything about her outside of the stuff about Bunny Mellon. But it is funny to me because Bunny Mellon, to me, aesthetically, is upstream of Martha Stewart. So much of like what I grew up seeing on TV, and all the crafts and the way they do the gardening, and you see the hedges that are kind of shaped to be like these round ball. Like my mom had all of these like fake hedges and stuff that looked like that. And I wasn't aware until kind of recently that Bunny Mellon, I doubt she was the originator of all of this, because she, collaborated with the Gardens of Versailles. It's not like she created the concept of home and garden decor, but a lot of American pop culture stuff, I think, is really downstream of her. And I just think that's so fascinating. And she was obviously aware of some of these esoteric ideas, but still trying to figure out how much. I'm not sure.
You mentioned the hedges. Like, could it be related to the hedge maze in The Shining as well? Like,
it could be, yeah,
that aspect of it.
But I mean, all the garden stuff. Today's chapter is Adonis's garden, so I think it's obviously bigger than Bunny Mellon. But there's certainly a lot of vegetation stuff going on. Last night we went to a concert locally, and someone Luke went to school with did the floral stuff, and it was all roses and then hedges. Basically, she went and cut out all of these other greenery things, so it was very much a vegetation situation.
It was beautiful.
It was,
but very,
but it felt very relevant,
very synchronistic. All right. Do we want to say anything else about this slide before going to the next one?
I like your point about it being a cage. I think that's really interesting, and how it plays into maybe these longitude, latitude concepts become the cage that wrap us. There's a lot of fixation on the 33rd parallel, and obviously somebody decided where the 33rd parallel is, in my view. Well, I guess this comes down to this conversation about, did numbers exist and we discovered them? But to me, it feels like, okay, we decided where the first parallel was.
Well,
On and on and on.
maybe it also might have followed from the presupposition of the globular nature of the Earth as well, and how you start to divide it all up. So I don't know. I think it takes some deeper research to know how they actually put that together. But it's fair to consider, and I think you raised some interesting points about our numbers discovered or created.
You want to move on? Okay.
Well, just because we got an hour
Okay.
and 20 minutes
Okay.
to get there. Okay, so. Wow. I mean, really just looking at this Corona site was just crazy. You know, as a small kid, there was like kind of this joke, or it was very easy for kids to get confused about who the first man that walked on the moon. And some kids would go, Louis Armstrong, and then everybody would laugh, right? And there is something very bizarre about the fact that there are these American heroes that are both associated with the name Armstrong that were in the popular consciousness, right? And you have Louis Armstrong saying, "What a wonderful world," while Neil Armstrong is giving us the perspective to appreciate the world, right? There is a cycling or a circling of this name Armstrong at the Corona site in 1964. Louis Armstrong was, in fact, a native of Corona, Flushing, Queens. He was known as the King of Queens back in the day. Before the popular Kevin James TV show, it was Satchmo. And Satchmo, they even gave Satchmo a special day on June 30th, 1964. It was Louis Armstrong Day. It may be nationally. I have to go check that out. I didn't. And ironically, about the same time, Neil Armstrong was at the Corona site because he was there. No one really knew who he was. I think people knew that he was an astronaut, but they didn't know how special he was going to be. This is 1960. This is 5 years before he would do that. And also one of the largest pavilions that was put together at the Corona site was the Armstrong Cork Company Pavilion. I think it had some sort of special partnership with Ford. I'm not exactly sure, but you can see it there. It's quite large. And so what does this mean? The fact that it was Louis Armstrong and Neil Armstrong and the Armstrong, like that's a lot of Armstrongs to be at this place about the same time, if not the exact same day. And it could potentially be like, look, if this whole site is about building the future, right? Building the world of tomorrow, we are going to need some sort of strong arm to get us off this shrinking globe, right? It's almost like the collective was calling in the man with the strong arm to get us to the future, to get us off this shrinking globe. Now, that's not where the bizarreness with this site ends. Even like decades later, it still like attracts symbolic resonance to it. So one like 10 or like 13 years later, in 1977, I believe, Billie Jean King, the tennis complex was made there. This is the woman that was made famous with the whole Battle of the Sexes match, right? And it is a rather large tennis complex that is upon the grounds now. I'm not intimately familiar with it, but what I do know is that this is very interesting when you have someone named King associated with Queens, right? Not only that, there is a stadium within the Billie Jean King tennis complex known as Louis Armstrong Stadium. So we have the King and the Armstrong here again. And it was often joked that Billie Jean was the inspiration for the Last Moonwalkers song, Billie Jean. So at this one's, I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm saying, except for the fact that these symbols, it's like this is a dense center of gravity, if gravity is such a thing, right? That keeps attracting kings and Armstrongs and moonwalkers to it in some bizarre way, like just kind of in like a fractal sort of fashion. I don't really have anything profound here to say, but I want to put it on your radar that one of the most important things that is at the site now is the Billie Jean King complex and the Louis Armstrong Museum, or the museum, but also the stadium. So just bizarre. So you guys have any thoughts about this?
I did. I did research about the history of moonwalkers back in the day.
Yeah,
So,
the
I mean,
dance.
they used to make cartoons about the moons. They said the first moonwalk was in a cartoon from a Fleischer cartoon in 1930s. So it was about married couple animals going to the moon and to celebrate
Interesting.
the
You'll have to send
honeymoon.
me that.
Yeah, yeah. I thought I'd send it,
That's
but I thought it was too corny, and I mean, it was basically
no,
a
no,
cartoon of puns. So they said, "Okay,
nothing is
we're
too
going to
corny
do
for me.
honeymoon." So they're going to the moon, and then this guy he leaves his bride behind, and he's sad. And then on the moon, he's moonwalking, like he's walking backwards in that
Is he
slippery way.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
I don't think you should put that on your radar. I thought that was just amusing. But also, Danny walks
Ah,
backwards in a way. He's a moonwalker, and
What animals
it was
do
like
you
giraffe
remember?
and zebras, all those random animals. Like it was like a Noah's Ark kind of
Mm.
situation in a sense. It's like they were filling them with couple of animals, and then one,
it's
yeah.
I mean, one of the big things that's always, even when because I was a little kid when Michael Jackson became popular, and I never understood why they called it a moonwalk because it's nothing like what the astronauts actually did when they were on the moon, right? It's not like it involves slow motion bouncing or bounding or anything like that. It involves walking backwards, and I think that's profoundly interesting. From the little bit that I've dug into it, I think that some of the dance moves were lifted from Bob Fosse. But then obviously, I think Bob Fosse probably got it from those older sources. I mean, there's a rich tradition of where this thing comes from. But why would walking backwards be a moonwalk? Why? How did Michael Jackson get this title? There's a little bit of a connection to it. I mean, I think it probably has something to do with the maybe his association with Captain EO. I think Michael Jackson's Moonwalker was also an assortment of small films that came out in the mid 80s, but that was probably inspired by the dance as well. So something to look deeper into. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Okay. So, and Kristen's going to leave us here shortly. I want to just say, Kristen, thank you for sitting in today. If we don't get a chance to formally say goodbye, really appreciate this. I hope you come back soon.
Yeah, I definitely will. And
Good.
thanks for having me on.
Good. I'm serious. I really want you to do like an intro for the show.
In my German accent.
Yes, please. Okay. So what I want to share here is something I mentioned at the outset. Of course. Something I said yesterday, when we think about the Christic imagery involved with looking at JFK, ought it to be a surprise to us, given the role that stars play in the Christ narrative, ought it to be a surprise to us that JFK comes in and he's all about the stars, all about going to the stars and wondering at the stars, right? Pointing up and saying, "Look at this one," et cetera, et cetera. Like that in itself, I think is a pretty strong parallel to the Christ story in some way. And then he gets in there about the time that he's making the Rice speech. They have this Mariner 2 program that's taking an image of Venus. Well, Frazer tells us that he believes there's good reason to believe that the Bethlehem star is Venus and that this is a relic of the older Adonis and Aphrodite story. So the fact that Venus is associated allows the wise men to find Christ, is a pair. This shouldn't surprise us at all. So when we see the Mariner 2 satellite going to the surface of Venus very early in the Kennedy administration, again, we're having that mythological narrative tagged on to the Kennedy administration. And it's the Mariner satellite, right? We've often talked about JFK, given his naval background, but also the similarities with Odysseus. Both of them are mariners. So we have the mariner going to Venus. I think this fits pretty well. Not to mention that given the nomenclature at one point, um, uh, uh, at least for the Romans, I believe Apollo was considered to be Apollo Luciferos, The solar alias of the light bringer, meaning the sun's dawn with the brilliance of Venus, is the morning star. So there was a time when Apollo Luciferus was associated with Venus. So if we weren't getting a strong enough signaling with the stars, with the Mariner 2 satellite to Venus, we're also kind of getting it with the Apollo program, which at one time was also associated with Venus, the morning star. So how about that? Makes a lot more sense now, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's so out of the blue, actually. Like suddenly decided to do all these things. I mean,
Yeah, we're
they said
going
they're
to Venus, we're
getting
going to
launch to the
Mars, we're going
Soviets.
everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, why do they have
Yeah,
so
I
much
think
money for all these things?
I think the idea is that the understanding of Venus at the time was that it was like cloaked in gas, and they didn't really know what the surface looks like. So like the model of Venus that you might have in your mind, it's a pretty unexceptional, to be honest. I don't know what you think when you think about the planet Venus, but then what they believe they unearthed with this Mariner 2 satellite, they're like drastically different, which is interesting in and of itself, right? Perhaps pointing to the two-sided nature of this goddess figure. I'll have to think about that a little bit more. Jordan, there's actually a quote from the Rice speech that JFK gave up there in the top right-hand corner, if you just want to situate this. Or not top right,
Sure.
top right-hand corner of the image with him, the Mariner 2 satellite.
Yes. Bye, Kristen.
Bye.
Bye.
And now, if America's new spacecraft succeeds in reaching Venus, Mariner 2, we will have literally reached the stars before midnight tonight.
Stars. It's crazy. It's crazy. What I'm showing here, I don't know a lot about the Artemis program. I've been forced to learn a little bit about it as the research has taken me in that direction. But you can see here that the idea of a magi or a wise man is not going away with the counterpart to the Apollo mission. In fact, they have one of their crew members. His name is Reed Wiseman. I believe the lead. I believe they're trying to get the first woman on the moon. Her name is like Christina Koch. So clearly, there's a Christ reference buried in her name. I've not done an analysis of all these other different figures. I think one is named Hansen, another is named Victor. But clearly, this symbolism involving the Christic figure is still in play. I don't know if either of you want to say something special about this. It was really just a comment I was making in passing.
Yeah, that is. I think it's in line with all your, the discussions you did with John Schmidt and that John Young, the astronaut for Apollo. So there might be something there in their names as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, we can go to the next one. Okay, so this is a reference to some of the concepts that we talked about with the Frazer in chapter 33 and 32, where we looked at whether or not Adonis could be associated with, specifically with a corn spirit, a harvest spirit. This was I think the theory of Lagrange that Frazer generally approved of, but thought it was short-sighted because it didn't go back far enough. Something I learned putting this together is that there are connections to wheat and grains to JFK. During some negotiations with Russia, some diplomatic negotiations, I guess they were undergoing a famine. And so to use some soft diplomacy, what he tried to do was to give the Soviet Union wheat. And you could see that this was part of a program, I believe it was called Food for Peace. And it was passed shortly. I think it was like one of the last things he did before he was gunned down. So he was distributing the bread, right? And this is interesting from the Adonis perspective, right? Where these Adonis rituals would involve the spreading of ground wheat, right, for the dissemination of that spirit. But also, if we go to the next slide, Jordan, and we start to think about this in terms of Thanksgiving and perhaps a connection to the Last Supper and Jesus breaking the bread and saying, "This is my body," right? So in a way, he's breaking his body, giving it to everyone. Not to mention here a really fascinating synchronicity I found. We've looked at all these different parallels between the 16th and the 36th presidents, between Lincoln and JFK. Hopefully, I've got their numbers right here. Oh no, JFK was the 35th president. I'm sorry. The story goes that, and this is a memorial to it, I believe this is in Connecticut where you can see this, that the origin of pardoning turkeys came from Abraham Lincoln, and his son Tad had a turkey named Jack that he befriended, and he didn't want to be killed for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, and Lincoln pardoned the turkey. And this has become a mainstay of American politics ever since. JFK is pardoning a no-name turkey, which is potentially interesting if we think about the Odysseus riddle, if he's in some way connected to this turkey and the whole not having a name, encountering the Cyclops, etc. But he did this 3 days before he was shot in Dallas, and one has to wonder if there's something. This is just part of the long lists of parallels between these two presidents, but then also if there's something, and we haven't gotten too deep into it yet, about like a scapegoat ritual that's going on here, right? I believe this is something that happened in Leviticus or Exodus, where the sins of a community were put onto one of these animals and sent out into the woods and like devoured by some sort of like demon or something like that. So yeah, I just thought that this was profoundly interesting. I think as time goes on, or say the Golden Bough, will be able to link this better. But for right now, I'm just marveling at the fact that Abraham Lincoln pardoned a turkey named Jack.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was crazy. And it being the first one that started this tradition.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
I think this is fascinating. I just remembered something about, since you mentioned the 16th president. In Full Metal Jacket, did you realize how many soldiers are there, like in the beginning of the movie? So there are 20 on this side and 20 on the other side. So by 1987 or 86, when the movie was being made, there had been 40 presidents. And so if you look at the position, who is the 16th president and who is the 24th president? If you look at them, these are the two presidents that have been assassinated. So if you count from one side, you will end up on Private Pile. He's the 16th guy. If you count from the other side, you will end up on 24th or 25th, maybe. So that will be Private Pile again. And that's also the president that has been assassinated. So that was interesting to me.
Interesting.
So that's why I thought
I
they
didn't
were
know.
related to presidents, because 40 presidents were there during that time, and he made that.
Was McKinley the 24th president?
Someone, I think I remember, like I checked him up, and some guy.
Grover Cleveland had two non-consecutive terms. He was the 22nd and 24th.
25th president, 25th. It could be, because 40th it will be.
Yes, that was McKinley. McKinley was assassinated. And by the way, I believe one of Lincoln's other sons, Robert Lincoln, young Bob, he has a nose for being at presidential assassinations. He was like at 3 different presidential assassinations, including McKinley's.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence.
I mean, that's
cool, Ostic. I had no idea.
Because if you count, because he does not give you the counting order. So if you count from any side, you'll end up on the guy who has been assassinated. So that was interesting to me. I'm like, wow. I also figured that since Pyle is JFK, so the other guy, and because if Pyle is JFK, then the other guy would be Eisenhower beside him, and the other guy would be Truman, the cowboy, and Joker would be FDR. And he punches FDR in the stomach, and he falls down like a limp. I thought, look, he's given him polio or something. I was just speculating about it. So like, okay, if Joker is FDR, Truman is cowboy, the middle guy is Eisenhower. He does not care because he walks by a guy, and then he faces Pyle and he is JFK. I don't know. But I had this theory. I could not progress it further because I was not really acquainted with US presidential politics. But this fit, I mean, counting from both sides and ending up on presidents who have been assassinated.
Yeah. I want to go
Also,
deeper. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
we talked about it before, but the turkey is a phallic fertility symbol?
Is it?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Go on. Go on,
Go read that.
Queen.
It's one of the more graphic, I would say, descriptions in the Penguin Symbol Dictionary.
Oh, I gotta look it up.
Stuffing the turkey.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah. There's that. I hadn't thought of that actually. That's pretty funny. But
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a
I
lot.
mean
There
it's
is sexual stuff going on. Like it's yeah. There's a lot of sexual when people prepare the turkey. There is like sexual innuendo like
I hadn't
associated with it.
thought about that at all until Austin
Yeah,
mentioned it. But
yeah.
the display of the feathers and everything. But anyway, the turkey is a fertility symbol, which is interesting to me with all these fertility rituals coalescing and combining into this big event. So anyway, it's just interesting. It's the masculine. And
Something.
in this in particular, it looks very much like a sun. You could think of the feathers of the turkey as the rays of the sun.
There's something to that. Yeah. Perhaps noting, I didn't point out this detail. Though the bird did not have a name, it did have this. It did have this sign around its neck, "Good eatin', Mr. President." So if you wanted to read between the lines there, I'm sure somebody could develop something. Not exactly sure what to make of that.
It's also weird. It's
Yeah.
sad too. Like personally, I think
Yeah.
it's all very sad. But um yeah, a turkey named Jack.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it, right? Like it's pardoned until he didn't. I don't know. I got to think more about it. But I do want to talk about the timing a little bit more. So if we can go to 694. So this is one of the few pictures I could find of JFK eating corn, which I find that to be super intriguing, given that we're talking about the Adonis spirit being a corn deity. And like I said earlier, it makes so much sense that um, he would do the Russian wheat deal and distribute it to them. I mean, that's what Jesus does at the Last Supper. And it's like one of his last things and it's like, honest to God, I just made that connection like a half hour before we went on the air here. I, I feel so dense for not picking up on it. And so this ties Adonis being a corn god and Jesus being associated with bread and from Bethlehem, which I think had associations from an etymological perspective with bread. There's all this wheat and bread symbolism that circles both Christ and Adonis and now JFK. So it makes a lot of sense here. And so, typically when we look at the Adonis festivals, they're happening in midsummer or they're happening in spring. But I don't think there's anything that says that it can't happen at a harvest festival like Thanksgiving, where it's these little gardens are put together. We have these cornucopias. The settings oftentimes have like lots of agricultural things associated with them, pumpkins and things like that, and then it all gets thrown out in the trash. It's not too different from these gardens of Adonis that women would put together and mourn and celebrate the death of this short-lived king figure. And you think about this, like how with even to this date, like because I'm sensitive to the calendar anomalies, like it's kind of hard to get super excited about Thanksgiving. There's always an element of gravitas to it because the JFK assassination is always celebrated perpetually a few days beforehand, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's in the back of anybody else's mind, but even as a small child, it was always in the back of my mind. So that kind of mirrors the mixture of sorrow and thankfulness and pleasure and pain, which seems to be a characteristic of the Adonis Festival.
Yeah, for sure. It's a funny picture. I can see why there's not a ton of photos of him eating corn. It's like
it humanizes him.
yeah.
There's lots of fun JFK pictures out there. Ones you don't see typically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's next? Unless someone wants to say something about this. Oh, so may I proceed, or Osik, did you want to say something about the last slide?
I was just thinking, like, since you were talking about you having this feeling of sadness as you approach Thanksgiving. So, what is going on in the media? I mean, it could be a personal thing. Is it a personal thing, or is it like a whole nationwide thing that people have in their minds? Is like lodged into the mythology that he is associated with Thanksgiving in that sense. Now that,
I don't think any, to be honest, this is the most extensive conversation I've ever had about JFK and Thanksgiving. I think it's, if I had to guess, I think it's subconscious. And I think I've never really talked to anyone about it. I suspect I'm not the only one. Maybe other people aren't as sensitive to these things. I mean, Jordan, what about you? You're from Dallas. Is it what what what's it like in Dallas around Thanksgiving?
I don't think I really remembered the exact date until much later, so I can't say it's some conscious thing. What makes sense to me is you start to see the days shorten, and that certainly has a psychological, emotional impact, just physiologically, getting less sun in the day and the weather is starting to get colder. I think my personal experience being in marketing and sales, and it's become such a crazy capitalist week, right? So a lot of the stuff professionally that I'm prepping for manifests the week of the harvest, the week of Thanksgiving, but I don't know that that is normal or not normal. But it is kind of this hype cycle, at least in America, where it's shifted over the years, but even thinking about Black Friday and what alchemically or magically is going on there, it's weird. It's weird. And then, there's a lot of different people feel different ways about Thanksgiving. As an example, it's not Thanksgiving, but they've renamed Columbus Day in different parts of the country to be an Indigenous Day. So it is it's a weird holiday. It's like fabricated for sure to coincide in I say for sure. From my perspective, I think it's fabricated to fit in with all of the general harvest themes and harvest mythologies. It's just our current one. It kicks off to sort of this holiday season. So it's this portal into this longer holiday season where we have New Year's and Christmas and all of these things going on. It kind of like primes and preps people for that time of year where we know there's a lot of Saturnalia type rituals going on. But I don't think it's consciously. I think the JFK thing fits into maybe these bigger harvest narratives than necessarily like a specific, more localized sense of doom and gloom. And I don't know, but maybe that sense of doom and gloom is the aftershock of the JFK event. It's hard for me to say because I wasn't alive when it happened, so I can't really think back of what it was like before and after, but it certainly has lasting effects. Like it's still, if you bring it up to my parents, like it's still very traumatic for them. And the loss of this promised golden age of Camelot is like pretty brutal psychologically for all of them. So it's interesting. I know, Luke, you've said this before, but you have all the golden age stuff kind of being reset with Trump. It's almost a reboot of Camelot, but it's also not Camelot at all. And that's really fascinating to me. I think we're in a transition phase where the new grid, the new calendar is kind of being created to get, at least in the West, the culture on this like news cycle. TBD. We'll see what that looks like.
My experience is that I don't want to name any names, but I think a lot of people think they've moved on from this event and they haven't. I crossed paths with a very high profile person who, when I asked him if he knew what happened 50 years earlier or whatever, was confused at the question. I ran into him on the day that on like the 50th anniversary of the JFK assassination, and he was like befuddled. So and he should have known. And if someone like that would not know, then I think it's pretty obvious that the general public does not know. But I think they feel it in their soul.
That's probably true.
Okay.
It's a
All
spell.
right. Yeah, it is. All right. So let's talk about Castro. This is an insight that I am borrowing from Downard, from King Kill. He pointed this out. I'll see if I add anything new to it or whatever. At the time when I was listening to it, he had something to say about the name Castro, which is interesting. It's come up before because when Marilyn Monroe won the Artichoke Queen, she was the Artichoke Queen of Castroville. So I think there's something significant to that. Perhaps we can talk about it since she is the Aphrodite figure. But many conspiracy theorists believe that Oswald was like an extension or a sympathizer of Castro and that he was the boar that killed the Adonis figure, right? The name Castro is similar to the word castration. It has a similar etymological point of origination. I think it means castle, fortress, or fortified place, and obviously castration is to cut off. But I think where they come together is that these castles are cut off from the rest of the society. So there is a faint connection between these two things, and you can see something of the virility of the Adonis figure cut down at this particular time if we're buying into this particular mythological narrative. The way I think these things coagulate in a certain way that allow us to interpret them, but I don't necessarily think that they're what's happening, right? And I think it's almost like there's a template from above that is organizing the events of our world and forcing them into these imprints, into these molds. So I just found that interesting. And I want to make sure I give credit to Downard on that point.
Yeah, I think if you remember this slide for the next episode, you'd be pretty excited about it because in the next chapter immediate to this one, they talk about this the festival they had that was based upon this myth of Adonis and Aphrodite and their collective mourning or sort of something. They
Mm.
have this similar festivals in other places and they sort of syncretized in a way, and a lot of those festivals, especially in Syria, it's written in the Golden Bough that they were guarded by eunuchs, those temples, and like the goddess
Mm.
was surrounded by a bunch of eunuchs. I mean, and during that festival they used to castrate themselves and like throw around the blood and smear it on their faces, and a lot of different things is going on. I mean, that chapter was pretty brutal. So that castration theme, it is very much a part of that. And so yeah, I think with the Golden Bough
I did not know that.
concurs. Yeah, so if you
I
I
did.
was anticipating your surprise for you. I'm sorry for the spoiler, but you
No, it's
you
fine. I'm not one of those people who gets upset about spoilers.
yeah. So yeah, there's a very concrete connection to castration and the Adonis myth. And since you've connected it to Castro, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I can we pause 1 minute? My mom called.
Yeah.
I gotta check that she's okay.
Ooh.
Perhaps it's a lot less taboo. People don't lose their minds when you're talking about Shakespeare not being who he said he was, or if he was a conglomerate of people, which is kind of my view. What is interesting about this is that looking into the publication history of Venus and Adonis, like a few days before, maybe a few weeks before, Christopher Marlowe died. And one of the reasons, when I looked into this whole Shakespeare issue years and years ago, a big sort of thing that got me like the red flags was like looking at all the different portraits of Shakespeare, the busts and things like that. They don't really look like each other. And this famous Cobb portrait of Shakespeare, to me, if I had to choose, I feel like it looks closer. It might be a tell that it looks closer to Marlowe. And there's a whole theory that that Marlowe is the true Shakespeare. I don't know what I tend to defer to what's his name, who passed recently, Alexander Bough. I think that's his name, he believes everything is traceable to Edward de Vere. I think it's more likely that it's a bunch of different people, but he would be the one to really consult on that. But I find that interesting. If there was anything like a fake death or something like that associated with Venus and Adonis, like, does that mean what this series of events that we're looking at with the JFK assassination, that this ritual of Adonis and Venus is played out somewhere else in our supposedly enlightened modern world? So I don't have anything to add but to that, but of all the plays to start with, and of course, Shakespeare's famous for all the world's a stage, saying lines like this, right? I just found it very curious that this is the very first one he does. And it's at the heart of the Golden Bough.
Of course, of course.
It might be a set of poems. I want to make sure I have this right, because it's a poem. Let me correct myself. It's a poem. So it's the very first publication, but it's a poem. 1593.
A poem or a sonnet?
Oh, is there a difference? I don't know if I know.
Well, sonnet is a type of poem, right?
Yeah. I think he's
Google
very
is telling
famous
me
for
it
his
is a
sonnets.
narrative poem.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm not going to split hairs about that just yet. What are you thinking, Ostic?
I'm thinking like, where are you going with this? That
I don't know. I don't have anywhere to go with it. I just found it interesting.
yeah, okay. So he's
Maybe I
beginning
shouldn't have
his
said
literary
anything at all
career,
about it.
or like a group of people are ushering this thing into the world, and they are starting out with Venus and Adonis myth, and it's about someone's resurrection after death.
Yeah.
Is it?
Not to mention, we should read the poem, because I didn't even have a chance to do that. Not to mention, we've looked at this before, how much of Shakespeare is woven into the Kennedy administration. So that's probably where I would take this, right? We talked about the Shakespeare night that seemed to foreshadow the fate of JFK, because they had the murder of King Duncan from Macbeth there, and the speech from, was it Henry V? Is that what we watched? Or is it Rich? I forget which one it was now. And there was
we watched
another one.
Hamlet. Yeah, we watched Henry V.
Laurence Olivier.
Was that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I bet if I had to take it somewhere, that's where I would start taking it. So
I mean, all the Shakespeare stuff is so encoded.
No.
It's crazy, and so much of our contemporary language is lifted from it. It's all very bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about the Globe Theater.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's right. The Globe Theater. That's kind of where a lot of this got going.
Yeah.
All right. Next slide. All right. I've wanted to talk about this for the past couple weeks. This is the crazy story about how we got the blue marble photograph. I had never heard of this individual. Maybe Ostic had. This is the man that got this going is named Stuart Brand. Stuart Brand was friends with King Kesey and was an auxiliary member of the Merry Pranksters back in the 60s, and he's kind of considered to be this like Johnny Appleseed of technology character. We watched a documentary about him called "We Are as Gods" or "We Are as Gods" because there's this famous story about or anecdote about Brand who would say this and said we better start acting like it or get used to it or something like this. And the story
They compared him to Johnny Appleseed.
That's right.
They also compared him to Forrest Gump.
They
That
did.
comparison might tell us a lot about Johnny Appleseed.
It might. And mainly because he's just, and what Jordan means by that is that he's like at all these different like pivotal world events. Like he started something, this, I tried to get a copy of it, but he started this magazine, the Whole Earth Map or something like that. It's probably on the Wikipedia page, which I've covered up. I tried to get a copy of it off eBay. They're hard to come by. It was kind of considered to be Google before Google. It was before you had a website that you search thing. He would try to put so much information in there about a variety of different topics. I wanted to experience it for myself, but it's at least $70 to get it off eBay. And I don't know if I'm that curious, but how is all this relevant? So Brand was an early environmentalist and enjoyer of LSD. I think he got into LSD via Ken Kesey, and Ken Kesey got into LSD because he was a voluntary participant in early MK Ultra experiments. You know, I don't know if he saw something in the paper or flyer or something like that, but he allowed himself to be experimented upon this, and through their bus further going across America, they brought the drug culture to people. And Stewart tells this story about how he was looking at the horizon and he's like, man, this is crazy. It's 1966. There it is, Whole Earth catalog. It's 1966 and the world looks flat, but I know it's not. And so he starts taking acid and he starts to see the curvature of the earth. The earth's the skyscrapers and everything start to bend around the curve of the earth. And he's like, why don't we have it's 1966. Why don't we have a picture of the earth? And so he's printed up these buttons, which essentially say that. I think they said, why don't we have a picture of the earth? And he distributed them everywhere for like 25 cents. And because of this campaign that he did, I think it forced NASA's hand to finally get us a picture of the Earth in its totality. You got a glimpse of it in 1968 with the Apollo 8 mission, but ultimately you get the whole Earth in 1972. And that's why it's called, I think that's part of the reason, or one of the main reasons why you see the image of the Earth on the cover of the Whole Earth catalog, which was the prototype to Google. So yeah, had this man, it's interesting. His name is Brand too, right? And like, and he's like the logo for his brand is the blue marble. I don't know, but this is just someone that I would not have ever discovered if I had not gone down this line of research. And really, LSD is responsible for our image of the Earth. How about that? How about that?
This is amazing. I mean, it tells us about how, like, literally these things need to be brought about. It's not that, like, when we grow up, we think of them as givens, but these are literally constructed from the bottom up, in the sense, and like very strange people. Now, this is, I mean, I really like that whole magazine in a way. It was a very artistically triumphant kind of magazine. I really like that magazine when Jordan was scrolling it up. But yeah, I'm very.
Had you ever heard of this man before?
I had not, unfortunately. That's why I was very excited about when you sent the trailer and the link. I went, wow, this guy, this seems interesting. Because I'm really interested in all these guys from the 60s about the Buckminster Fullerene and, Richard Feynman.
Yeah.
All these people, they were kind of my heroes growing up in that way. So, yeah.
When you were growing up like 5 years ago. You're so young.
I was in my teens. I had these books by Feynman. So yeah.
I was saying to Jordan before he got on here, I was like, Ostick is so smart. Like, I was like, would I be as smart as Ostick if I was 25 years old today? And then I was like, well, I'd have more of the internet, so I could have become more of an autodidact.
Yeah. That's the thing.
So it's like if you were my age, if we met in 2005 with the internet what it was, would you be smarter than me? I was thinking about that.
I'm not smart at all. I'm just responding to what you're giving me. Like these things I would
Yeah.
not actually, have the patience to follow through. So you have other things. Like you guys have a lot of discernment and a better attention span, more openness to the different possibilities of the world. I mean, like if I was presented with this documentary, I would not go around thinking the way you're thinking. Like I would not even allow myself to go there. I would say, okay, yeah, sure, this
Oh,
guy, random guy.
well,
But
I'm training you up, Ostick. You got to take the torch from me one day.
yeah, you're training me up. So I'm like, I'm still not willing to take the plunge. But it's just it's a fun house. It's a circus mirror. It's I really enjoy. I
It
really
is.
enjoy this period of American pop culture. Like
Yeah.
this whole thing.
Well, if anyone's interested, there are copies on eBay. I mean, the movie is pretty good. I think the first hour or so, I was like, oh man, this is like just boomer slop. But the last half hour is really interesting. Apparently, he's pretty preoccupied with resurrecting the mammoth right now. He's still alive, and yeah, he wants to reanimate. His goal is to bring back the woolly mammoth right now. That's what he's all
Wow.
worked up
So
about.
he's with all those guys at Colossal Research, the ones who were coming up with dire wolves. I think that was busted.
Coming up with what?
Dire wolves. There was a story in the news a few months ago about them bringing back these very big wolves. Yeah, Colossal Laboratory.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, dire wolves. Yes, I remember that.
yeah. That was people talked about them. A very strange kind of people are involved in this behind this one. So I
Yeah,
think a friend of mine has a podcast episode about this as well. So I was thinking about it. So
yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's relevant. That's interesting that the man who is responsible for getting us the image of the Earth indirectly, I should say, is also leading a resurrection effort. That feels important to me. But we've got 20 minutes left. Let's see if we can get through the final 4 slides here, I think. Oh, 5 slides, 4 slides, 4 slides.
I mean, the whole DNA, there is so much there. We're just gonna breeze past it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, not at all. There's so much, but I'm just saying, like, it's insane. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. Okay, so this one, I don't know. This was just a really interesting Nexus cluster and I don't know exactly what to do with it, but I figure I just put it out there and maybe get some feedback from you guys. So one of the thing I got thinking about the idea of the ecological movement being paired with the moon landing, I wondered if there was something significant, and I think there is, about this photo that Charles Duke planted on the moon during Apollo 16. He had a family photo shrink wrapped there in plastic that he put on the moon, and this happened on April 20th. It happened on 420. And I was like, that's what's going on with 420. Like that has to be significant somehow.
H
And there
birthday.
were 2 things that I found. What's that?
Hitler's birthday.
Yes, it is Hitler's birthday. It is also like, that's so strange, right? Like people celebrate 420 and okay. So it's also the day that Louis Pasteur first pasteurized milk, right? So that's a pretty significant event in modern history. But it's also associated with smoking weed, right? And I looked at, I was like, how did this even become a thing? Like, whatever. So there were this group of friends called the Waldos, and they would leave school and go to the Louis Pasteur statue. I have no idea if they even knew. I don't think they did. I don't think they did know why that he pasteurized milk on 420 until much later. But they would get together at 420 after school and smoke weed. It was 420 Louis, right? That's where it came from. But why did this story about smoking weed at the Louis Pasteur statue, why did this even get into the pop culture? Apparently, some of these friends were also friends with Phil Lesh of the Grateful Dead. And so this terminology got passed on to the community via Phil Lesh and his friends. And through the Grateful Dead dedicated following, it got passed on to the larger culture. I find it interesting that the Waldos are associated with 420, and this picture was put on the moon at 420 because it is like finding Waldo, right? It's an Easter egg that you have to go hunting for that most people don't even know about. And then when you zoom in, the color scheme of the family of Charles Duke's family, it's all red, white, and blue, just like Waldo. They're like Waldos on the moon. But this is like so bizarre because the Waldo books came out after the Waldos started meeting at the Louis Pasteur's statue, which they didn't know was associated with pasteurization on 420, but then later did. I don't know what I'm looking at here. I think it seems like there is some uncoordinated fractal that's happening on this 420 date, and how Hitler gets mixed into it, I don't even know. But there's something about heat processes and weed. I mean, maybe just the whole idea of just like that weed and 420 are connected to this, and the wall like it establishes a tether between the ecological movement and drug use and the moon. I have no idea. I don't know what to do with this. It's just strange. All right, I'm going to stop talking. It's like the slide I had earlier about Billie Jean King with the Louis Armstrong Stadium and the Billie Jean Moonwalker song. It's a mess, but it's also meaningful. Can anybody make sense of this?
If you don't pasteurize milk, you'll get cheese. And people talk about the moon being made up of cheese.
Oh, that's
It's a joke.
interesting. That is interesting. No, I think that might be more relevant than you know. Right. I haven't even explored this idea that people say the moon is made of cheese. Cheese, Gromit.
Uh,
That's good. I like that.
Also, I thought about him leaving his photograph of his nuclear family on the moon was significant. I mean, people talk about. I mean, there's a whole artistic tradition from the 1950s in American cinema, specifically in the films of David Lynch, where he questions this family arrangement, like the nuclear family. I mean, why were they even called the nuclear family? Because they were the kind of families units that were encouraged after the World War, and there's a very strange state of normalcy around it, and you got just your family. I think he's hinting at a sort of public mind control or public what do you say, shepherding, or just blocking people in, like that thing about the World Economic Forum. They say you'll live in the pods and eat bugs or something. It's like the nuclear family is supposed to be something of that sort in David Lynch's cinematic universe. That's what I feel in a way. And I think him, and we have talked about the moon being some sort of a nuclear test site in a way, that it was because people astronauts were testing on moon. So him leaving the photo of his family on the moon. So I thought about that. It's not very strong, but just the things that we have already discussed. I'm like an LLM repeating the things that you've already taught me. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear yeah. I mean, the planting of a family. That's the thing I kind of keep coming back to.
These things about, him being a first man, the movie about Neil Armstrong being called the first man. The first man is Adam, and then we all already talked about it being a fertility ritual and it being related to the Garden of Eden. Repopulating a world anew. It's like we are playing gods in that sense. It's like we have planted this man on the moon. We have populated this land with it's a literal reenactment of Christian theology in a way. It's like
Yeah. I guess, yeah, I guess we could see it that way. And so I brought all the attention to the clothing. Something I should bring our attention to is the background. It looks like this is a picture taken in a backyard or a park, and clearly there's the green grass there. And you contrast that with the desolate lunar surface. So maybe this is just part of the process of the vegetation ritual, like you're saying.
it could be. I mean, it's so charged, this whole event. So
Clearly the name Duke is got to be important in this as well, and I haven't really thought too much about that. I mean, I'm not going to give up, but that's a pretty major tell, but I've yet to investigate it. I'll get there eventually. Jordan, you want to say anything?
I don't have much to add on this one, but a lot of this it feels like to keep us distracted, right? Like this 420 spell feels a little bit to me like I don't know.
Well,
I'm
yeah,
marinating on it.
yeah. Well, there's a special term that people are calling weed these days, which I'm pretty happy about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Starts with a G and ends with a P. Okay.
Yeah.
This I just thought was interesting. I did not know that Allen Ginsberg, I think via one of his poems, it escapes me right now, was responsible for suggesting that the hippies use flowers as a form of civil disobedience. And because of these different currents that were going on in the environmental movement, the production of the earth image that perhaps incentivized the growth of the ecological movement, but he also had flower power happening. And I think that's very interesting when it's almost like a sword to plowshare situation when you see these hippies putting flowers in the guns and bayonets of these soldiers. But I just thought this was a really interesting picture. We have a rare moment where one of the Navy scuba divers that recovers the capsule from the moon missions, he actually has adorned himself with flowers from the hippie flower power movement. So we kind of see these things, these currents coming together. This is just one of those details that, I mean, it's just kind of lost to history. I don't think you'd ever know unless you were kind of obsessive like me, and you would find how important is this? I don't know. And I heard when looking into one of these stories that, I don't know if it was this splashdown or another one, but a Navy frogman supposedly put a flower power sticker on one of the windows of the capsules when it came down, but I could not find a picture of that. So I just find it all very symbolically interesting.
For sure.
Yeah.
Is this the same guy? Is he related to Stephen Wolfram? This guy, or are there many Wolfram?
Which guy?
John Wolfram.
Wolfram? Who are you talking about? Oh, John Wolfram. I don't know anything about John Wolfram other than
okay. I'll look it up.
Him
later.
being a Navy. I have to say, the frogmen are probably relevant as well. The fact that they call them frogmen is perhaps interesting.
Amphibians.
So, yeah.
There's a lot with frogs and magic. It's not a stereotype for no reason.
Yeah.
They must have been recruited by a princess kissing them.
Maybe so.
Maybe so. I like that. I like
CIA
that.
honeypot.
I like that. This slide. This was just really to satisfy my own personal curiosity, trying to understand the distinctions between the King Arthur story and the Fisher King story. These are like these are separate but very well connected different mythological stories. We specifically got into this trying to understand the difference between them all when we're more fixated on the Camelot aspect of JFK. But what I had here in this chart is just the historical documentation of when these stories got merged together by Mallory and others as they tried to tell the story, and what some of their fundamental differences are. We can go into them. We're probably need to wrap up here soon, but I just, if someone's interested, they can take a screenshot of this. But this is something I'll probably be drawing on for the future. I probably need my glasses to even see the slide now. But you can see some of the differences in how they get married together. Like, for instance, in King Arthur, the state Camelot, a physical kingdom of law and chivalry, whereas in the Fisher King, the guardian, the spirit, is that Corbenic, a mystical hidden castle housing the Holy Grail. And then the 12th century poet Chichen de Troyes, forgive me, first introduced the Fisher King into Arthur's world in Parsifal, the story of the Grail. So it's just a little bit of this. I'm not doing a great job presenting it because we're at the tail end here, but this does give us a little bit of perspective of how these stories got woven together over a period of time. And it's a whole sort of study in and of itself. It'll be relevant. We'll probably revisit this slide at some point, but I wanted to introduce it to people. And then, are we going to get to the last slide here? I mean, I've talked about this before. We've talked about playing golf on the moon in so many different ways. This all started with me kind of picking up on a Jack and the Beanstalk narrative, and then we got into the whole moon tree thing. And this seems like an eternity ago, but I think I said this at some point. I don't know how much I really need to belabor the point. If the moon landing is a vegetation ritual, whatever that means, okay. Of course, they could have played any game on the moon. They could have smuggled anything up there. I don't know. They could have smuggled some tennis rackets up there, or a bat and a ball. I don't know. Whatever it was. But I think looking at Alan Shepard smuggling the golf club up there, hitting the golf balls, I mean, if there's any sport that you associate with wide open greens and vegetation, it is golf. And that kind of is fitting with some of the other vegetation clues that we picked up on. I mean, look, you got Alan Bean there, right? Like he's really, this is where we get the beanstalk, the Axis Mundi. So we are finally caught up after 2 days of 2-hour podcasts. We have gotten through all the slides, and I can finally start anew.
I really like
So
the cameo by
I'm
Alan
done.
Bean again. Like, we're meeting him
can't
after
forget
a long
Alan
time.
Bean. Yeah, it's good to see him again. He'll come up again. Alan Bean, I think I said this at the time, he's the second half of his life he was a painter. He did a bunch of painting. So I'm not exactly sure how that fits into all this, but
I mean, it's
just
an
made
imaginary, it's a project of imagination from what I see. It's like, even the game of golf, you said it represents all these lush green lawns, but also game of golf is quite exclusive. It's like it's played by rich people in a way, and they're like,
that's true.
they
That's true. It is
it's,
exclusive.
it's kind of like, you remove poor people from there to make grounds for rich people. It's a very British idea. People, all these British rich people, they talk about, oh, so many people in the world, there's too much overpopulation. And I think this kind of fits into that, all those, whatever, there were some stones that were blown up by some guy in Gladstone or something.
The Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah. So I think those guys, they are somewhat in a similar ideology as all the space program, and this Alan Bean thing. It's just a hunch, because the aesthetics and the way they talk and the way they portray themselves. All these guys, I mean, even Elon Musk, they very subscribe to that idea about wanting open spaces for themselves, and to be able to play golf or something. So I think there's something in there.
Mm-hmm. Did you choose to wear that T-shirt on purpose because you knew that we were going to be talking about these rituals, or did you just grab it
I
on a
just
whim?
grab it from the top.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, I've worn this T-shirt
It's
before a
perfect.
lot of time on this podcast, but I think since we've zoomed
Well,
in because of this, it's more visible now. I think because of
yeah,
the,
Oh,
that's true.
yeah.
so yeah.
Well, it's 1:46. Jordan, I'll give you the last word.
I feel satisfied. Thank you for the marathon. I'm glad we got to do it. And there's a lot of other slides. Austin and I, on one of the breaks we're going through,
That's just
you have,
brainstorming stuff.
well, there's a
Yeah.
lot more to come. So it's fun.
Yeah, those are all half-baked ideas. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I shared today was half-baked, but it's I don't have the answers. And so, I want to share
don't.
things with you guys to get some feedback, and I appreciate everybody who sticks, who comments and helps out. So,
Yeah, we should say that in
We're
the
figuring
beginning.
it out.
Like, subscribe, and comment. The people.
yeah, I should. I feel like that self-evident, but okay.
Not all
Yeah.
things are
All right, guys.
self-evident.
Thank you. Yeah.
Justin Bieber
All right,
promoted his
guys. Thank you
album.
so
He
much.
posted about it in 40, 50 times in 2 days. So if Justin Bieber,
Who did?
if he needs
Oh,
to
yeah.
promote his album, he'll, do it by every hook and crook. So like, not
Hook
that
and crook.
you have to be very passive about it. I'm just saying, I'm just pulling your leg. Sorry. So let's go.
No, it's fine. Well, look, and now you're promoting him. I didn't even know he had an album. It works.
Yeah.
It works. All right. All right. I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.
Toodaloo.